Jurors convicted Dwayne Moore of first-degree murder in the slaying of 4 people in the Matapan Massacre case.
This story is one of the darkest, most heartbreaking moments in Boston's history. The kind of nightmare that still lives in the minds of a whole neighborhood. September 28th, 2010, Mattapan, Woolson Street. What happened that night wasn't just a crime. It was a massacre, where people were murdered execution style in the early morning hours. One of them was a baby 2-year-old Saini Senegal. That's right, a baby shot in the chest. You hear that and it does something to you? That ain't regular street violence. It's evil. That's something deeper, something rotten. It shook the whole city.
Nice.
And in the middle of all that death and pain, there was one man who survived. Marcus Hurd. He was 32 at the time, and he got shot too. Took a bullet that left him paralyzed from the neck down. But he lived. And because he lived, he became the key to everything that came after. Police said it was all over some street beef, maybe a robbery, maybe a setup. They believed it started when one of the victims, Kamani Washington, was bragging about having money and drugs at a stash spot. That talk made its way to the wrong ears. Word is, some people planned to hit that house. According to investigators, Dwayne Moore and Edward Washington Kimani's own cousin were the ones who carried it out. They said these 2 men stripped the victims naked, lined them up, and executed them. Cold. No masks. Out. No mercy. And in the middle of it all, a child lost his life. Cops said Marcus Hurd was the only one who could tell the world what happened. And when the case went to trial in 2012, all eyes were on him. But here's where it gets wild. Marcus took the stand, rolled into that courtroom in a wheelchair, carrying trauma none of us could understand, and he told his story. He talked about the chaos, the fear, the gunshots, the pain. He talked about being shot and left for dead. But he never said Dwayne Moore pulled the trigger. Not once. He never identified him. And you gotta ask yourself why. Was it fear? Was it loyalty? Or did he really not know who shot him? The prosecutors, led by Assistant District Attorney Edmund Zabine, pressed hard. They tried to get Marcus to name Moore, tried to make the jury see Moore as the killer. But the defense attorney was slick too. He pointed out every hole in the story, every contradiction, every shadow of doubt. That first trial, it ended with no verdict. Hung jury. The system couldn't close the door. So they came back for round 2, same charges, same courtroom, same witness. But this time, the jury found Dwayne Moore guilty. First-degree murder. 4 times over. Life without parole. To the public, that looked like justice, but to the streets, to the legal community, and to those who really know how trauma works, that verdict raised even more questions. Because a man was sent away forever without the one living witness ever saying he did it. That ain't clean. It's not the justice system at its best. It's the justice system doing what it can with what it's got. And what it had was pain, confusion, and silence. But that silence said everything. Maybe Marcus was scared. Maybe he was protecting someone. Or maybe, just maybe, the system got it wrong. What we do know is that Marcus Hurd's life was changed forever. He wakes up every day in a wheelchair, carrying a night that still plays on a loop in his head. He lost his body, he lost his people, and he was put on a witness stand, like a symbol of justice, when all he really had was trauma. And let's not forget the victims. Shaniqua Craig, Stephen Odom, Kamani Washington, and baby Saini Senegal. For lives gone, for families broken, and a community that still remembers. That block on Woolson Street, it's not just a crime, seen it's a scar. A reminder that the pain in these neighborhoods is real and it runs deep. Because when something like this happens, it don't just disappear after the cameras stop rolling. The media forgets, the courts move on, but the hood is left with the trauma. Kids still walk past that house, mothers still cry, and survivors like Marcus, they carry that weight every damn day. This wasn't just a courtroom drama. It was a tragedy soaked in blood and silence. It was about more than a shooter. It was about a system that keeps failing to stop the violence, failing to protect Black lives, and putting the burden of truth on the backs of the broken. Marcus Hurd didn't give the court the closure they wanted. But maybe he gave them something more powerful. His pain, his survival, his truth. And sometimes, that's the realest testimony of all. Rest in peace to those who died that night. Gone, but never forgotten. And to the survivors still living with it to matter, your story matters. Even if the world keeps trying to forget.
Using testimony at the Matapan Massacre trial, Kamani Washington saying that he agreed to testify against two defendants because he felt bad about the slaying of a mother and her 2-year-old son. He says they were innocent victims and they didn't deserve to die. Kamani Washington is testifying in the trial of his cousin Edward Washington and his friend Dwayne Moore. Both men are charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder for the 2010 shootings and have pleaded not guilty. Washington also talked about what he did with the money he got from the drug robbery. He got $1,800, $100 of which he gave to his mother. Washington also said that he felt that he alone was also capable of violence, but he felt horrified by the slayings of the mother and child and said he could never have done that. Under his agreement with prosecutors, Kamani Washington will serve 18 years in prison. The 2 people he is testifying against could face life in prison. I'm Mike Bello for the Boston Globe.
The man convicted yesterday in the killings of 4 people during the so-called Matapan Massacre in 2010 was sentenced to life. He received 4 life sentences. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. However, there will be an appeal. At these sentencings, you also have what's called victim impact witness statements. This is a chance for the families of those who were killed to say something about their loved ones and how their deaths affected them. There was a lot of emotion during these statements. And you also had some anger when one of the aunts of the victims said, "I hope that the brutal and savage way that you killed these victims haunts you for the rest of your life." So there was a lot of anger, but there was also a lot of emotion, a lot of love described for the people who were killed. And outside the courtroom, there was a lot of tension. While the families of the victims were hugging each other, smiling, very happy to have all this over, there was one mother who wasn't feeling in any way joyful. This was the mother of Dwayne Moore, who had just watched her son be sentenced to life. A photographer was taking pictures of her, something that she repeatedly asked not to have happen because she's worried about her safety. And she lost her temper. She picked up an umbrella and she struck the photographer in the face. It shows you the level of tension that was going on in that courtroom. And Maria Kramer?
Guilty of murder in the 2nd degree. Not guilty. So say you, before me. So say all members of the jury.
I'm here at Suffolk Superior Court where a stunning verdict has just come in. Edward Washington, who was described as the getaway driver and the man who supplied the guns in the killings of 4 people on a Mattapan street in September 2010, has been found not guilty. This not guilty verdict on all 9 counts against him that included the murders of 4 people, including a mother and her 2-year-old son, left the family devastated.
Don't talk to me. Don't talk.
There were screams of grief, cursing. One woman, the sister of Ayanna Flannery, had to be dragged out. It looked like she was lunging for the defendants when she was in there. It was extremely emotional. The other defendant, Dwayne Moore, he was not convicted, but he's also still facing these charges. He was only acquitted of 1 charge. That was a cocaine trafficking charge. And he now has 9 counts against him, and they include the murders of the 4 victims.
We expect in the trial, the 2nd trial that will come about in the next few months, that we will hold him accountable for these heinous crimes. We always believed the evidence suggested firmly and strongly that Dwayne Moore was the executioner here.
The jurors, I should say, were called heroes by the defense attorney, Jack Kuna. This was Ed Washington's lawyer.
So we are very grateful for the jury. This is our system. It worked. I'd like to say that these jurors are heroes. They stood up against a lot of pressure, and they did their job.
But for the families, after waiting for weeks through horrible testimony, and then waiting for days, agonizing days for a verdict, I don't think that they can think of the future right now. All they can think about is this horrible news.
They deserve the same thing that they did to everybody on that street that night. So to be found not guilty, all of that was all of it. They deserve to die.
This is Maria Kramer with the Boston Globe.